On today's episode of The Intangibles, we'll be kicking things off as always with the play of the game. At 7 minutes and 29 seconds, we'll answer the FAQ, what is the structure of a pro season of Overwatch and League of Legends? And finally, at 26 minutes and 42 seconds, we'll break down Esports Shoutcasting. Hello, welcome, bitches, to The Intangibles, with your hosts. It's me, Kenny.
And your other host, the bitches.
How's it going, Matt?
You know, it's going quite well. It's wonderful. I'm excited for the docket we've got to discuss today, and just, excited to be here.
That's good. That's good. I like that you're excited. I like that you're hyped. Do you have a great play of the game for us?
I think it's pretty good. I certainly think that our fans might vote for it because it's ridiculous.
Okay, he's already playing to the audience.
That's right. The audience, they're my people. I'm always thinking about them. I just want to win, That's what this whole podcast is about. Trying to win even if you didn't win,
Yeah, true.
So I guess I'll start us off probably, right?
Yeah, please.
All right. So for my play of the game, I'm going to give it to whoever let the Pizza Hut delivery person into our building so that they could deliver that pizza all the way up to the front door of my apartment instead of leaving it at the front door of the building. Probably saves me about a minute and a half of total time. More value and effort there, I guess, than anything. But it was a very pleasant surprise to get it hand-delivered to my door instead of doing that. So to whoever it was within this building who made our building less secure and allowed them to enter, I salute you.
So was this today, before this recording?
No, this was yesterday.
And also, how is it a minute and a half of saved time? I've been to your place.
I'm just estimating that to go from our apartment, it's probably a little bit more than that, but going from our apartment, walking straight down the stairs to the front door, grabbing it, going back upstairs, it's probably a couple minutes, 2 or 3. It's really not that much time.
I guess you're getting shoes and you're getting keys,
yeah,
and you're heading down there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving it to the person who let the Pizza Hut delivery person in?
Yep, exactly.
That is very intangible. I have to give you that one. They will never be known.
They will never be known. Honestly, the Pizza Hut person could have broken in for all I know. We will never know how it happened. But
could have been a drone delivered the Pizza Hut.
Could have been. And that they delivered the person inside the building. No, that doesn't make sense. No matter who did it or how it happened, it brought convenient pizza straight to my door, and I appreciate that. Oh, it was stuffed crust pepperoni. We are not sponsored by Pizza Hut. I'll have the world know. Veronica and I just really enjoy Pizza Hut. No one out pizzas the Hut, is my understanding. And we live by those words. So we had a pepperoni lover stuffed crust. It was delicious. I wish we had more because I would eat a piece right now.
Yeah, so we are not sponsored by Pizza Hut. But if they want to sponsor us, we are wide open. We are gaping for Pizza Hut.
Yeah, we've got time slots. We can put a 15-second advertisement smack dab in the middle.
We'll put a 15-minute advertisement for Pizza Hut in the middle, if the price is right.
In fact, the beginning of this has turned into a couple of minute-long advertisement for Pizza Hut.
Accidentally, yes. Well, that's pretty good, and I think you're right that will win over the fans compared to mine. Mine, I will say this, though. Mine is quite intangible. My play of the game is going to a concept, and it is going to the concept of blowing flashes.
Blowing flashes?
Yeah, does that sound dirty?
It sounds weird, that's for sure.
This is a League of Legends thing.
Do tell.
So I need to lay some groundwork. In League of Legends, you play a champion, you're trying to kill the enemy's base, you have unique abilities as your champion, blah, 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 we all know that. But you also get to choose 2 summoner spells. So there's a little pool of spells that everybody gets to pick from, and you get 2 of them. And the one that almost everybody takes almost every time is Flash. And it's just a little blink. You just move a short distance instantaneously. It's good for offense because you can flash on top of somebody and try to kill them, secure a kill. Or somebody's coming after you, you're getting ganked, you can flash away. Great. But it has a very long cooldown. I think it's like a 3-minute cooldown, basically, which is crazy long.
300 seconds, according to the internet.
There you go. So it's a very long cooldown. Now, recently when I've been playing League of Legends, it feels like every time I go in for a kill, my enemy immediately flashes away from me. And that's called blowing a flash. You're using up their flash.
Gotcha.
You don't get anything for that.
You're pulling that cooldown away. Now they don't have it again. You can set them up for something else potentially.
Yes. You're using up their cooldown. And then every time I do this, all they do is die to one of my teammates like 30 seconds later. And I don't get any credit for it. I don't get any gold for it. But it's very important that you do blow flashes because that's how you enable your team to get kills. So I got to have some respect for junglers because that's a big part of your job is to gank lanes and use up people's resources, their flashes. And you very well might not get any credit or any score or any gold or any XP for doing that. But it's a vital job that you have to do. And there is zero recognition in the game for blowing flashes. So to all the people out there blowing flashes on a daily basis, I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
I feel like we need to bleep out a bunch of this segment here. We can't just be saying flashes like this all nonchalantly. I would call it flash personally because you're enemy. You're them off, if you will.
Oh my god, that is filthy.
This play of the game, though, that you're giving it's true to the nature of the intangibles, right? We're talking about in a video game, an unrecognized, important action that needs to be performed to win, and you'll just never ever see it on the board. You'll never get that medal that says, I did this.
It's kind of going back to the traditional intangible play of the game.
Back to our roots.
Yeah. Because, this is something that the reason I'm feeling this recently is because my scores looked like dog shit in League of Legends recently. And so I'm really noticing when I'm blowing flashes. You gotta take what you can get.
That's right.
Alright, well, we leave this to you, listener. Which gets the play of the game? The person who called in a pizza to Matt's apartment or the concept of blowing flashes? Alright, let's move on, though. We're going to the frequently asked question. And this time, we're doing a little two-part thing here, where we're talking about the structure of our favorite esports. How is a season of Overwatch structured? How is a season of League of Legends structured? And I think it's kind of perfect because I'm a very casual watcher of pro Overwatch. I tune in for games here and there. I tune in for finals here and there. But I really don't know how it works. And I literally asked you, do you have a good grasp of it? And we're like, hey, maybe that's a good episode. People who don't know, are interested but don't know how it works, this could be a good primer for it. So we're going to start with you, and we're going to talk about how the Overwatch season is structured, and then I'll talk a bit about how the League season is structured.
It is perfect because, like you said, I very much don't know how. I know bits of how League is structured, but I forget it because I just ask you once a year while you're watching the finals and stuff, and then I forget about it again for next time. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I have to confess, too, when you asked me the question about Overwatch League, I didn't truly know exactly how it worked. And so this is a good exercise for myself to become more familiar with it. It's kind of interesting, and I'll be curious to see what your thoughts are on how it's divided and how it's done. But so in general, Overwatch League is a group of 20 teams divided into 2 regions. The kind of funky thing with those regions is that there is one region with 8 teams and one region with 12. So it's a little imbalanced for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why they elected to do that because, I mean, if you look at it geographically, it's not really divided that way. They are called the East and the West. But
it's not actually geographical.
There's one LA team in the West and one LA team in the East. It does skew, more West Coast and Asian teams versus East Coast and European teams. But we're talking about online gaming. Like, I'm sure they can make these games work one way or another if they did 2 10-team divisions. Whatever. I'm not hired as the guy to put this together, and until I am, I'm offering no more advice.
Okay.
So it's divided into the East and the West. I won't go through which teams are in which just because it's a long list of names, and if you are curious, you can look them up on Overwatch League's website. They have a nice little visual, puts them in their 2 groups. The gist of how a season works with Overwatch League is that you've got regular season matches, which occur within the individual regions. So you've got teams in the East playing each other, teams in the West playing each other. You've got tournament qualifier matches, which are the same. They are still divided by region, still divided in East and West. You have 4 tournaments throughout the year that are still part of the regular season. And once those qualifiers are completed, you get teams that are seeded into those tournaments, and it's a double elimination tournament. And then through all of this, the teams are scoring points towards their league total by winning matches. So you get a point every time you win a match in the regular season, every time you're winning those qualifiers because they're considered regular season matches. And then you get a different number of points if you actually place first or second in one of those tournaments.
So you get extra points for finishing at the top.
Exactly. So you get 3 points if you win first place in a tournament. You get 2 points for second, and only 1 point for third, but you're still getting that additional point. So that's the basic gist of it. Teams are building points by playing regular season matches. You have potential for more points by winning the tournaments. In those tournaments, go ahead.
And you get paid for winning the tournaments.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going to go next. So in the 4 tournaments, let's talk about their names real quick, because I kind of hate them. I'm not a big fan of how Overwatch
I agree.
has named their tournaments. It's like they went for this alliteration thing, and it just feels like they really have to try hard to make these names that just sound kind of lame. But there's the May Melee, the June Joust, the Summer Showdown, and the Countdown Cup. So those are the 4 tournaments. They go in that order, as you can guess, based on May, June, Summer, and Countdown, of course.
It's very silly to have the June Joust and the Summer Showdown.
They
June is in the summer.
Yeah, they clearly were like, shit, we can't do anything with July now. What are we going to name it?
We already had a J name.
So somebody needs to work on that. I'm not giving you any offers or advice, Blizzard, because again, they're not paying me. But those are the names of the 4 tournaments, and those do not include the grand finals at the end of everything.
That's the big tournament for everybody.
Exactly. So that's
the top teams.
Exactly. That's the top 8 teams, I believe, are in that.
Over the course of the whole season.
Correct. So, going back to the tournaments, the 4 lame name tournaments, if you win first place, along with your 3 points, you get $100,000 for your team. Second place, along with your 2 points, you get $70,000 for your team. Third place, along with your 1 point, you get $35,000. And actually, fourth place gets $20,000 as a little reward there, too. So
that's nice.
Opportunities for the teams to just make some cash and have some fun with it. I don't know. They probably have parties for underage kids. Is that a thing? I don't know. And then the actual playoffs, those final 8 teams, the prize is much more substantial. First place is $1.5 million. Second place is $700K. Third is $350. Fourth is $250. Fifth is $200. Sixth is $100. And then the last 2, 7th and 8th, both get $50,000. So if you make it into the big tournament at the end, it's worth it. Even if you're the worst team there, you got $50K. It was a good year.
Yeah.
And that's basically the gist of it. It's pretty simple when you get into it, and I think it's really not very clear when you're just watching the matches how any of this works. I think the way that they name stuff is confusing. There's not really a good, just full regular season schedule that kind of feeds into things. So it can definitely be confusing to get your grasp on what the hell is going on during the season. But basically it's, again, every single match counts for points. Every single match is important. Tournaments count for more points because it's more opportunity to play. You might get 3 points instead of 1 for that win. All of it at the end of the day is to try to win that $1.5 million.
Yeah, I feel like the names of the tournaments really was the initial source of confusion and why I talked to you about it in the first place. Because it's like the May Melee, and then the very next month, the June Joust. Another big tournament. I understand it's big, but I don't, what does this mean? Is each one of these its own individual season? It is definitely not apparent to me. Even watching the whole thing, it's like, I don't know what any of this is.
Yeah. It would be way more simple and less lame, in my opinion, if you just named it leg 1, leg 2, leg 3, and leg 4. Just gave it it gives you kind of an idea that these are in order, that the tournament is just the end of leg 1 or whatever you want to call it. And again, I feel like you could make a schedule much simpler by doing that, but
it would definitely be easy to make it simpler, because the ultimate idea with Overwatch and League, which I'll be getting into now, is that it's a year-long season. You have regular games that build up to the Grand Championship, the World Championship, the Absolute Finals. You could just do it like the NFL. A bunch of regular season games that feed into a playoff that go to the championship. But esport has like a different demand to it, which is that you don't know how long esports are going to be a thing. You know, you don't know how many more years Overwatch is going to be played at the pro level.
Yep.
Or League at the pro level. So you kind of have to keep getting people's interest built up. And you also have it's kind of a double-edged sword, because in pro sports, you have to worry about the weather. You have to worry about the seasons. And when it comes to esports, you can play all year long. That doesn't really matter. So you need to really be breaking things up for people watching, because if it was just like a full year going into a championship and then you start all over right afterwards, it could get really exhausting. So they need to break it up into tournaments.
Real quick, going back to your comment on not really knowing how long the actual span of time that this esport is going to cover, I think that you probably with League of Legends, it's a much lesser concern than on the Overwatch side. Overwatch is still only 3 seasons into Overwatch League. They've had lots of problems retaining viewership and making it interesting. So we're going to talk about casters later, which is going to be perfect for this, because there's several casters who have even kind of commented on the direction of Overwatch as an esport and how they don't feel that they're putting the right emphasis on the right things and really driving it in a direction that's going to make it successful. And that's obviously an important factor in how these schedules are developed, how the teams are developed, how the players are even kind of, it's just like in a real sport where you want to have these high profile players who are cool. They represent the league and the team, and people want to, wear their jerseys and shit like that. Like that all ties into making this a successful sport.
Yeah. Absolutely. So League is, 11 years old at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about. And one thing that they have done that I really love, that I feel like not a lot of other games have done as far as a pro esports thing, League of Legends has one long season for the pros. That's not that unusual. It's split into 2 halves. Okay? But also, for me, the average player, a League of Legends season is also a full year. I experienced the same pro year, like the same year-long season that the pros do, and I experienced the same ranked rewards that it matches up, and it makes me feel more connected to the game. Whereas in Overwatch, in Rocket League, in Fortnite, in whatever, a season is like 3 weeks. I don't know. Like Fortnite's on season 150 right now.
Like 20 or 30 minutes per season, something like that.
And it just feels like it's so much harder for me to care about the season when it's that short. And I think it's very smart to unite the pro season with the average player season if you're in it for the long haul. Now, if you're just trying to, I'm making a game, let's make some esports, and then we're going to get the fuck out of here, I guess, make real quick seasons. That's like, you're not thinking long term.
I think that's an interesting point too, thinking about Overwatch, where they introduced hero bans, which is a totally different thing than you deal with as a player. It does just continue to push you further from what their experience is. And I feel like, like you're saying, a really fun part of the game is that even though we suck at the game, we're doing the same thing as these pros. We have the potential to achieve the same things as them. And
definitely.
And there's a certain point where you're not even, like, again, with hero bans and stuff, you're not even playing the same game as them.
Yeah, and it's definitely like, I'm thinking about like the GOATS comp. I mean, that was the worst of it for Overwatch, where it's like, I don't even this doesn't even look like the same fucking game that I'm playing at that time. And League, when it goes to Worlds, it's always fun to see like the weird picks that get pulled out during the Worlds Championship, and then you see them pop up in your games, people pulling out these weird picks and making them work. It makes you feel more connected to the game and more connected to the pro scene. But anyway, to give you the overview of the League of Legends season, it's one long season that's split up into 2 halves. and they call them splits. So this kind of falls more into what you would look for, like a leg or whatever. You have a spring split and a summer split. At the end of the season, each region sends their top teams to the World Championship, called Worlds. And the number that you get to send depends on the size and the strength of your region. So the main regions are Europe, China, North America, and Korea. They get to send 3 teams each. 2 of them get to go straight into the tournament. One of their teams has to play in against the minor regions to try to get into the tournament. And it really just comes down to how big is your region. The bigger your region is, the better your player base is, the more players that you have to choose from, probably the better your teams are. So that's pretty straightforward. North America's league is the League Championship Series, the LCS. They make tweaks every year, but the basic picture of how it works has been the same for a long time. You have a regular season where you have a round robin. There are 10 teams. They all play each other. Best of 1 matches over the course of the year. In the spring split, it's a double round robin. In the summer split, it is a triple round robin. And then the teams with the best records go on into a playoff, and there's a championship. So there's a spring champion and a summer champion. It used to be that people would complain, and I think there's rightfully so, that the spring playoff, the spring split, didn't really matter because that did not help determine who got to go to Worlds. So it's cool if you win spring, that's nice, but it doesn't really determine if you are going to be successful in the world stage. They have changed that since last year. Your record in the spring carries over into summer, so that does actually matter. It's pretty simple overall. The thing that changes the most in League, it feels like every single year they switch up how the playoff structure works for each region. I always have to look up what is going to happen. Last time they did it, they have a double elimination bracket where the top teams get a free loss, and then you go into losers bracket to try to stay in the tournament. And that's a pretty good system, but every season I have to just watch the shows and see, how does this work? Other than that, though, it's pretty simple. I like the way that league is structured. I like that it follows the course of an entire year. I like that my personal league experience echoes their experience. I think that's really smart.
I feel like a big difference here in general, so let's imagine that Overwatch League continues for 4 more years and makes it to a 7-year mark. I imagine there would be more consistency and more, if you were watching the league throughout the years, you would probably have a better understanding and vibe for it. So I think that the youth of the Overwatch League, it kind of hurts it, I don't think Season 1 was anything like Season 2 as far as the tournament structure. I think that June Joust and all that was introduced last year. Season 1 was kind of completely different. So they're clearly still trying to refine and figure out what they want to do. And hopefully if they're able to hit their stride and find something that works, then it'll become more familiar. It'll make more sense. It'll be more simple. But yeah, we'll just have to keep watching to find out.
I think that's totally fair. If you go back and look at how early seasons of League were structured too, it was a shit show there as well. The first World Championship is just laughable by today's standards. A young esport needs to grow. It's really tough because you look at pro sports and it's like the NFL is 60 some years old or however. It's just really hard to compare these different sports to each other when the pro scene has existed for 2 years. What can you really say about it?
That's an interesting comparison too, in my mind, because you've got these sports leagues that have been around for 60, 70 years, whatever, and you have fan bases around those cities they're loyal to their city. It doesn't even matter who's on the team or what's going on. They will, that is part of their life and part of their heritage, kind of. And you don't get that with esports or young sports like this at all. And the games are changing so much too that I think it's kind of impossible to really have that same kind of team-based impact. I feel like it's a lot more individual and a lot more, it's just a different scene than live action sports is, and you have to adjust how you approach your fan base because of that.
You care way more about individual players. For me personally, I'm a big fan of, in League of Legends, there's a player named Licorice who played for C9, and he got traded to FlyQuest, and he recently got traded again. And I like him as a player, and so I'm like a Licorice fan, and I don't really care about the teams he's on until he's on them. And in the same way in esports, you get casters who are just bouncing around from game to game, and you also follow them from game to game, which is a great segue, if I do say so myself, to our breakdown, which we'll get to after a word from Geekspective.
And here we go, round one. Both fighters sizing each other up. How about this heat?
A lot of people at home may think anybody can fight on a planet made entirely out of active volcanoes, but that's only because these two make it look so easy.
A lot of respect being shown here.
Obi-Wan definitely has his game face on, though. No matter what went down between these two, one thing is clear, and that is Obi-Wan is here to fight.
Absolutely.
Obi-Wan first to ignite.
Anakin ignites and explodes into a flurry of motion.
Obi-Wan doing a good job defensively, but he's letting Anakin dictate the pace.
Beautiful spin work by Obi-Wan. Anakin looking to perhaps finish Obi-Wan quickly by forcing him into some lava.
And a quick reversal by Obi-Wan. He may have been leading Anakin to that ledge intentionally.
And a huge push kick from Anakin.
Eerily graceful recovery by Kenobi. Skywalker pouring on the pressure.
So, as Matt alluded to, and as I segued from, this week we are talking about esports casting, or shoutcasting, as it is sometimes known. And where do you want to start?
I want to start with, I had no idea, honestly, until this moment that it was called shoutcasting. What is the origin of that?
So the origin of shoutcasting as a term, this is something I just learned too, because I just heard them, they were always called shoutcasters. And I just assumed it was because they're shouting and screaming. But there was an app called Shoutcast that early shoutcasters used to comment on professional video games. And so they got called shoutcasters.
Interesting. The more you know. Where do I want to start? Gosh. I feel like it's important. So we segued into this talking about real sports and esports. And
yes.
I want to start there, I think, with like what makes a good caster for a sport in general, and kind of what makes a good... So what makes a good caster in general, and also what makes a good casting duo? Because classically you will see casters paired together, right? And the best casting that I've seen in any sport is when you have two people who have a good dynamic.
Chemistry.
They're different. They offer kind of different things, but they work off of each other really well, and they give you both information about what you're watching and like analysis on that you may not have thought of, as well as just that excitement about what's happening that you're looking for. So I think that there's those two things in my mind are kind of what makes a good cast. And if you're missing those things or just going completely off the rails and doing other things, then it's not so much fun.
Yeah, I like to start because obviously casting in esports is going to have a lot in common with actual sports casting, traditional sports casting. I think, here's my opinion on this connection, and I want to hear what you have to say. I think most sportscasters, shoutcasters, suck.
Yeah.
And I want to go ahead and say up front here, this is an important disclaimer. I think it's an incredibly hard job. I think it is exceedingly difficult. I think that it is inherently hard to do. And so any criticism I'm giving here, you should take it with that grain of salt, that I could not do it. Definitely I could not do it. And the best thing that I read while I was researching, there is a former League of Legends shoutcaster named Frost Curran, and she was part of a video where she was talking about shoutcasting and how you get into it and how you be good at it. And she had a quote that I think could just be the entire segment. We could stop after this quote. She says, "You will suck. Everyone sucks." And I think that's kind of true.
I feel like that's a good approach to life in general, like, or learning something new in general. Like, you need to accept the fact that it goes back to the Dark Souls from Software advice. It's gonna
prepare to die.
You're gonna die, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's just fine. No, I agree with both of those items. I think that especially if I'm focusing, no, I'm not even gonna focus there. In real traditional sports, which is a better way to phrase that, and esports, the majority of casters, I would rather just not really have there. They're not really. If anything, they're taking away from my entertainment a lot of the time, which is difficult. And I also agree with you that it is not easy. And I think potential future episode idea or short idea or something, we should try to cast an Overwatch League,
an Overwatch
game that we haven't watched before, and just see how horribly difficult and how bad.
Oh my god, that would be really fun. Actually,
I think it could be a good 10-minute thing. Maybe someday we'll
maybe
do
a
that.
2-minute thing.
Yeah. We might not be able to make it very far, but
maybe a Patreon reward.
I agree wholeheartedly because it really takes good understanding of the game and quick thinking, quick speaking, quick comprehension. Like there's no time for anything. You know, you're watching, you're observing, you're analyzing, you're announcing things. There's just so much going on that I do respect everyone who does it.
Just the gall to get up there in front of tens and hundreds of thousands of people and potentially look like an idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a similar risk that the players are putting themselves at, you know? You're putting yourself out there in a big, big way.
Yeah. Even more visibly, because you're literally talking the entire match, whereas us as the viewer, we're watching one person's perspective at any given time, right? We're not necessarily seeing all the bad plays from somebody, but we're hearing every word the announcer says.
Mm-hmm. I will say, in researching this topic, I don't know if you had this experience, just Googling it, the top results all the way on the first page and beyond were about how do I get into shoutcasting as a job. And I was like, that's, on the one hand, I think that's really cool that people are that into shoutcasting and are interested in it. And on the other hand, I'm like, maybe that's why a lot of casters aren't very good, because everybody could potentially get into it.
Yeah, I suppose. I'm thinking to myself, too, like, there's so many people who want to do it that you're not necessarily getting the best of the best if they're not good at marketing themselves, not good at climbing and getting what they want to be, right?
Yeah.
I think some of the best casters that I know of have had previous careers in esports in some capacity, whether it's team management or like league management or playing or all sorts of those different things. I think some of the best that I've heard are those people who have been involved with the actual organization in some capacity.
You get that on one side, and on the other side, I think you get people who are just good at broadcasting. Mm-hmm. Some of my favorite people are just like, they're just radio personalities. They just have a great voice, a great delivery, very smooth. They're just good talkers, basically. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I feel like is true across all of sportscasting. I'm shocked at how many sportscasters are bad at talking.
Yeah.
It's kind of unsettling how many sportscasters just can't form coherent sentences on the fly. That's like, seems like bare minimum what you need to do.
You got to have that person you can relate to, you know, the person who speaks just like you.
Is that true?
No, I'm thinking to myself, so like NFL is probably the sport that I watch the most.
Yes.
And I think that's a product of itself in a lot of ways too. You've got former football players who have all been bonked in the head way too many times trying to talk about a sport. Like it lends itself to just idiotic conversation when it comes down to it. And I don't blame those guys who have been concussed dozens of times. that's like the game has made it that
fucked
way.
up.
It is, yeah, genuinely. But you also get really good. So like Tony Romo in the NFL, fantastic caster, was a wonderful quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. He clearly understands the game on a higher level than your average person. And when you like watch a game and listen to him cast, he's calling out stuff that hasn't happened yet. He's seeing things that you have no idea are a sign for anything. And he's telling you, the viewer, oh, this just happened. Watch out for this. It happens. And then he tells you how he knew that and everything afterwards. Like, there's the two extremes of casters, and that second extreme I just talked about is what I want when I watch a game.
Yep, I took note of that as well. Of like the trait of a great caster that I personally want to see is the person who calls something out before it happens or before it's relevant. When that happens in these games that I watch, I'm like, this person I want to hear more from. Mm-hmm. They have insight into the game. They're going to teach me about this game and teach me to appreciate what I'm seeing more than I could anyway. They are genuinely enhancing the experience for me.
Yeah, enhancing the experience and making you a better player when it comes down to it. Like they're showing you things you can use in game if you play and be on the lookout for, and plays you can do and stuff like that, which is just, if you are a player and you're passionate about it, that's what you want.
This is a callback to a previous episode. I believe this was Azael in League of Legends who called out a random item switch. So you can only buy 6 items in League. And it was very late game. This guy had a full build, and he switched his mythic item, your one big item that you get. He switched it towards the end of the game to be more of an assassination item, because he knew his team didn't have the superior composition. So he's like, I just have to try to kill the best person on their team. And I would never have seen that item switch. I never would have thought of it. I never would have thought it was a good idea. And him calling it out as he bought the item before the next team fight, I was like, that is genius. And that's also great that this person saw this, and it enhanced my knowledge of the game. It opened up this door that I never would have thought of before playing in League. Let's talk about stupid casters.
Oh, I can't wait.
Well, I think here's where I want to lead off with talking about complaining about casters. Again, caveat of how hard this job is. Mm-hmm. I think basically casters have an impossible job because you need to take these incredible moments and make them even better somehow. When the game is boring, you need to try to make it interesting. And when nothing's happening, you have to try to make it so that there's something happening that I'm listening to that is interesting. Like, that's a lot of hard jobs to do all at once. Mm-hmm. That being said, my biggest complaint about pretty much all casting, esports or otherwise, is just how much stupid bullshit gets talked about while I'm watching.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I think when I'm watching these games is just, can we just get back to talking about the game, please? Like, I don't want to hear about the t-shirt that you bought recently or a grilled cheese sandwich you had or whatever stupid bullshit you're discussing. Let's get back to the game. And my biggest pet peeve is the number of times in a given season of League that I'm watching where one of the casters will say, all right, let's get back to talking about League of Legends. As like, that's a great joke. It's like, no, you're right. You should be talking about League.
So we talked about casting duos briefly at the beginning of this, and I think that this becomes a serious issue when you put two casters of that same kind of goofiness and non-analysis together, if that makes sense. Like, if you put two people together who are going to feed off of that wackiness and kind of bounce back and forth on that and get way tangentially off of the game, it makes a worse experience for me. And I think balancing, it's like having your color commentator and your, I don't know, analyst. I don't know what I guess the two would be, but there's no balance between the two, basically.
You've got play-by-play, who is a person announcing things as they happen, and you get the color commentator, who is analysis expertise.
Right.
That's the classic duo.
Yeah. So when you just have two people who are being funny and goofy, it's not really adding anything to the experience. And like we talked about, it's not really teaching you anything. It's not really making it more interesting for you as the viewer and the listener. So I think of Brennan and Sideshow from Overwatch League as like the prime example of this. Listening to those two together, I think that Sideshow does a pretty good job of trying to keep it on track. But again, they can go off on these tangents of being goofy and just saying silly, stupid stuff that doesn't add anything to the experience. So I think it's important to have two people who work together well, but are also adding to your broadcast.
Definitely. I have two thoughts to follow up on that. One, completely agree. And I think that you do want two people who are going to riff off each other and cover each other's like weaknesses, basically. My example of a caster who is it's not a good duo setup. In League of Legends, typically this season we've got a lot of Freak and Azael. Azael is one of my favorite casters of all time. Super smart, super articulate, can be hype when he needs to. He's the color guy. Freak is the play-by-play guy, but the issue is he should be a color guy. He is super mathematical, super statistical, is thinking about the game constantly, has so much information, and is not very articulate when it comes down to it. So you get these two good color guys, and they don't work together, really. The other thing I was going to say, though, that fits in with this, and this was another thing that Frost Curran was discussing, is as advice to people who are going to get into casting, silence is not bad. It's not bad that you have a moment where nothing is being said. That's okay. You can just take time to let the game breathe. And honestly, I'm thinking about some of the games where I like the casting the most, sports or otherwise. Golf, I actually like the casting in golf a lot because it's quiet, it's reserved, it gets excited when it needs to, and it just gets out of the way a lot of the time. And tennis is very similar. There's a lot of just getting out of the way and just letting the player experience it and then punctuating with the excitement. And I kind of want more of that in esports. I think that would be useful. And League, honestly, is kind of the same. League is kind of like baseball. Not a lot happens in League games most of the time. There's not a lot of just thrilling excitement. You have a lot of people just last hitting minions and walking back to base. So I think letting that dead air just be there and not feel like you have to fill up every single second with inane bullshit is so important. And there's so many casters who don't seem to get that.
I agree. And I also think that it's like a boy who cried wolf kind of thing. If everything is the most exciting thing constantly, then there's no way to actually differentiate when something is that exciting. So you need to save that level of energy for when it's really warranted. You can't just every team fight in an Overwatch game can't be the most exciting thing you've ever seen. You need to be able to communicate to your viewer, this one thing was ridiculous, and here's why we're all hyped up. So I think that's very important. Yeah, if everything is super exciting, nothing's super exciting, right? It's the baseline.
The Incredibles. I have a whole section in my notes that is just titled Lies. And I think there's an inherent problem with casting any kind of sport, traditional or esports or whatever, where you very often in sports or in games, you will have a lopsided match where it's very clear that one team is winning and is probably going to win, almost certainly is going to win. So what do? For the casters, they need to keep you invested. They need to keep you like, this is important. Who knows what's going to happen here? But on the flip side, we, the viewer, are not stupid. If you are watching, if you're tuning in to these sports, you are probably knowledgeable enough to know that this team has an overwhelming advantage. So what do you do as a caster? This goes back to the problem of just casting in general. I think that's tricky. But I think that goes back to what you said as well. It's like, look, caster, I know what's exciting. Like, it helps that they are accentuating things. Because here's another thing I was thinking of on this entire topic. If you just take away all casting and you're just watching the game, it is worse. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say so. It's easy to zone out, to fall asleep, to lose your concentration on it if there's not that additional stimulation.
I think we've seen that, especially in the era of the pandemic, where we're missing out on crowds. We have been missing out on crowds, where it's like, that actually makes a big difference in my enjoyment watching a sport if there's just nobody there. Like, there's a reason they put fake people in the stands and fake noise in the stadiums, because it does really change your enjoyment of the game, the hype that's built up around it.
Yeah, definitely. What was I just thinking? So we were talking about lies. We were talking about, casters trying to make something out of nothing in a situation where one team is absolutely smacking the other team. And I think that, again, ties into, like, you have to be... You want somebody on that casting crew who is knowledgeable and can say, this is what this team needs to be doing now in order to flip this. Like, these are the things that are causing them problems. This is what they need to address. And then you can continue to watch that play out and see, they're not doing that and they're still getting smoked in that area. Or they are making those adjustments and they're starting to get some traction. Like, when it comes down to it, a good caster should be really legitimately analyzing what is happening, what's about to happen, what can happen if, team does whatever. I think that you can continue to cast those situations in a fun, interesting way without it being bullshit.
Yes, but I agree with you completely. But I like a caster who eventually will say, this team is doing bad.
Yeah, definitely.
I love a caster who can just be honest with you and be like, these are bad plays. This team is getting embarrassed out there. That's good by me. I don't want to be lied to.
Yeah.
Don't insult my intelligence.
Yep. I can agree with that.
Okay. So, a lot of, kind of dumping on casting. I'm curious, who do you like to listen to in esports?
Oof, that is a tough question. So, like, the only esports that I really watch is Overwatch League. And so, you're going to be familiar with one person who's no longer casting for them. Monte Cristo, I believe you're very much aware of.
He's on my list.
So, Monte Cristo and Chris Puckett were both casters in some level. Puckett actually became like a desk, like, mid-game guy, but they were both people that I really enjoyed listening to and actually added something to the game. Neither of them are with Overwatch League anymore, unfortunately. And end of last year, there was a big, it was end of last year, there was a big shakeup in who was coming back with Overwatch League, basically. So there's some new faces and some missing faces, and Vicky Kitty, who you've probably seen in a few of the qualifier matches at least at some point. She usually is casting with Jaws right now, Jack Wright. Those two are actually a good duo in my opinion. Vicky Kitty, I was actually listening to her cast Contenders, Overwatch Contenders games last year during the off season, which was she's great. It was cool to see her make that transition from Contenders to Overwatch League. She's a really good play-by-play. She's just kind of keeping things going, letting you know how things are, and Jaws does a good job of balancing her out and giving some more of that color. So I like them a lot. It's really weird because you and I were talking about this past weekend. We watched a match or two, and Mitch Leslie was the guy for a few of those, and I feel like his casting can be very bad sometimes and can be very good sometimes too. I've also watched him in videos outside of casting. I know he puts a ton of work into working on his casting. He's obviously working on his own brand and everything too. There was a YouTube video I watched of him and Jane. They did like a cast of an Overwatch match basically together, just as kind of like an exercise for Jane to see what it was all about and everything. And that was really cool. Like, it was really fun to hear them talk about the craft, hear him kind of talk about his thoughts behind it, hear him casually go into it with another person who's never casted in their life and just kind of bounce off each other and roll with the punches. So I think he's good in certain ways and like could continue to get better. There's certain moments where it's like he's just kind of being too much or too ridiculous and not really adding anything. But I like Mitch Leslie.
Nice. I mean, I think that's fair. Like, I definitely, all of the casters that I like all come with a caveat, because as Frost Curran said, everyone sucks, you will suck.
Yeah.
You can't cast full matches as a full-time job and not have moments that are awkward or weird
or even full games. Maybe you're not feeling it that night and you just suck.
You're just off.
Yeah. It happens to everybody. It happens to the players, like you said.
So I completely respect having somebody that I like, but they also are kind of off. And that brings me to one of the people that I like. So I kind of wanted to, if you're willing to entertain me, talk about some of my favorite casts for games that I've watched.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a guy who I want to talk about is Kobe from League of Legends. So he is a guy that you would like because he is an ex-pro, which gives him a ton of knowledge about the game. He's been with League since the beginning, playing and casting it. And he stumbles on his words, he stumbles over himself, he can be a bit awkward at times, but he just has such a genuine love of the game and such a love for the North American region, which we get so much shit so often, and he's always kept the faith. And one of my favorite moments for him is he doesn't say anything in this clip that I'm going to show you, but it just cuts to him in the camera when one of our teams got a quarterfinal win in Worlds when we thought it would never happen. And his reaction is just so beautiful.
For a spot in the finals. People always come to me and talked about my Korean bias, Korean caster, but honestly, the truth of it all, as you guys know, is I was always biased towards the best League of Legends, and that was so often played by the Korean teams. They innovated the meta for so many years. But this year, as recently as summer, I kept feeling like we were behind, that we were too slow, that the teams around the world could exploit. And this tournament is the vindication of that belief.
You're just so emotional.
It's amazing. It makes me, just watching that one clip of League of Legends casting where it's three guys in suits, very formal, talking about it very seriously. It's a stark contrast from what you experience in Overwatch.
I hate Overwatch cast. I'm just going to say it now. And I will say, we haven't talked about it, but just the clothes. I went from watching League cast to watching Overwatch cast, and they come in a fucking, t-shirt and shorts or whatever.
They're clily trying to do their thing with it, and I think it's
super casual.
I think it's failing miserably, as you can see by the exodus of casters. There's a lot of concern, honestly, in Overwatch in general, that it's not going to be able to maintain. It's not going to be able to continue up, and that's just going to die out as an esport. So I'll be very curious what happens moving forward. But yeah, just literally that 10-second clip of three guys barely even saying anything, honestly, just reacting to the end of a conclusion of a game, paints a very different picture.
So much more legit.
It looks like they are paid professionals who analyze and broadcast on a sport. That's what they are. So
but it's not a comment on those guys in particular. Mm-hmm. It's about how the game is managing the broadcast.
100%.
Yeah. I'm going to the next clip here, which is another League clip, which involves two casters that you will be familiar with.
It's in Brandon Sideshow.
This is one of the most iconic clips of all time. This is Faker, and he is going up against Ryu. They're both playing Zed. This is, I think, Season 1. And it's insane play that I cannot process.
Nightmares, you wake up in a cold sweat, you're like, Faker's behind me.
I know, right? I'm like, even though I only have a mat on the floor, I think he's in the bed. Oh, Faker may be in trouble here. Deathmark tries to clean it up for Ryu. Oh, look at the cleanse, look at the moves! Faker, what was that?
Faker with a huge play, the QSS.
I can't believe I just saw that.
Just zoom in on Faker's face, where he just looks like nothing is happening.
No. That was his opponent.
Oh,
that was
okay.
Ryu. So to go back a second.
I thought that was Faker, and I was like, damn, this dude is serious.
No, this is the guy he just killed, which is even funnier.
So I've never heard Doa this excited in an Overwatch match. Never once.
I mean, that play was... I picked this out because this is one of the most epic League of Legends plays of all time. And that reaction is just so raw.
This is interesting, too. So we're watching this video of Doa and Monte Cristo. They were the combo who, in Overwatch League, would announce together, too. They obviously have chemistry. They've worked together a lot.
Yes.
I was complaining this past weekend about Doa and ZP Doa and ZP, and I was complaining to you on the couch about this, that Doa and ZP, they feel like these two guys who have no idea how to work together. There's no chemistry. It just feels flat and not exciting ever, basically. And I've recently, doing research for this episode, discovered that Monte Cristo, when he left Overwatch League, Doa heavily considered basically did leave and then came back. So I don't think he wants to be there, and I don't think he, again, has that chemistry with ZP, and that's saying nothing about the two of them at all. But there's so much added to that clip you showed me of these two guys who are into this game together. They clearly work together a lot, and there's just a much better experience with the two of them announcing together versus him and somebody he hasn't really worked with.
Right. Monty, I wrote him down. He is definitely one of my favorite all-time casters. And there's a lot of him that goes on behind the scenes where he shits on every game that he leaves behind. So I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just commenting on his casting. I would probably put him as just my favorite caster all time. He is smooth, got a great vocal delivery. He's articulate. He's actually funny, which is so hard to come by in casting. And a lot of that comes from just being understated. He is so knowledgeable about every game that he casts. He can actually give you information. And the thing that I think puts him over the top is he is good at stopping his fellow caster from derailing the discussion. Because Doa, I don't love Doa by himself or with a random person. Because he does just start talking about the most random, inane bullshit when he's casting. And Monty is just a genius at laughing, playing it off, and instantly diverting it back into the conversation. So Monty's great, in my opinion. All right, I got two more clips for you, if you are willing to entertain me.
Bring them on.
So this one is a more recent clip from League of Legends from a guy named Rivington, who, in my opinion, he's not the most knowledgeable about the game, but he is a great radio broadcaster.
On people that escaped was burned, and they want Phoenix in this turret.
Oh boy.
He's pretty strong though. What's he gonna do?
Oh, he got two! He's gonna get a triple kill! A quadra kill! An amazing play by Phoenix on his ear! The legacy of Shurima is real!
Man, you're just showing me some bang-up plays, dude.
I mean, these are some of the greatest casts and plays in all of League of Legends. The legacy of Shurima is real. The speed at which he came up with that, which is like about the flavor of Azir as a champion, who was a new champ at the time, like his knowledge of the champ and its background lore and incorporating that into the cast was just so clean and so good. All right, one last one for you here.
One last time. Don't sue me, Lin-Manuel.
So this might be a clip that you've seen. I'll be very curious. This is not League of Legends. This is not Overwatch.
This is an esport that we don't watch with any frequency, huh?
It is an old clip.
Is this Super Smash Bros?
You're in the right ballpark. It is a fighting game.
I think I know.
This is the greatest clip and sports cast of all time.
Some rare footage of Daigo actually angry. Just as turtle style. Overcome Rao. Now on the verge of putting Daigo down 1-0.
It's madness.
It's unadulterated madness.
You know, that clip just shows me that a live audience for any of these kind of things brings so much more to it than you could ever bring without. Like having people physically there with that energy, with that emotion when it's happening. Like, you didn't need the announcer at the end of that. People were just fucking screaming and were so excited for what they just watched.
There's a reason that I can go to a stadium and watch a game at the ballpark and get that level of excitement with no caster going the entire time, because I'm feeding off that energy. But I think that is the point of a caster, is that in most situations, watching from home, you're not getting the same amount of energy that you would be if you were there. And so you need the caster to fill in that space.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You want someone to... You don't get the excitement and the vibe from the crowd. You need it from somebody.
Yep. So they are a necessary evil.
Yeah, I suppose that's kind of true. They are... You need them, because a game would be boring to watch on your TV or your computer without it.
Definitely.
But there's a good percentage of the time where having them is like, this is kind of obnoxious.
There's a big difference between watching a stream of a game being played at the high level, which is still entertaining, and watching a pro game where you're hearing the casters and you're getting the excitement on the line.
Yep.
God bless you, casters.
Thank you for your Is that appropriate? No, it's probably not appropriate. Thank you for your jobs.
I'll bleep that too.
I think at the end of the day, we need them, we love them, and we love to hate them.
That's very true. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Kenny.
I'm Matt.
We're the Intangibles.